Welcome everybody to Quantum's webinar today on staying online, how to continue to use your computer even with low vision. And our presenters today will be Peter Cracknell, who's our Vision and Blindness Technologies Manager. And we also have Michael Palmer, our low vision consultant, who's being the camera person here today. And I'm Rebecca Clark, Vision Technology Specialist here in Sydney. So the idea of today's webinar is, as we all know these days, being able to be online and access information digitally is pretty much essential, whether it's doing banking or shopping or keeping in touch with friends and family, interacting with government services, trying to book an appointment at a doctor, pretty much, or just even reading the news. Or accessing entertainment, pretty much everything is online. So how do you do that if you've got low vision and finding it harder to access your devices, whether that's a computer or an iPad or a phone? So this webinar is going to outline some solutions for doing that, whether that's with things that are already inbuilt in the devices or with assistive technology. So I'll just do my little introduction here. So first of all, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land from which this webinar is being presented and pay our respects to elders past and present. And for me, I'm on the land of the Darug people here in Western Sydney. So just an overview of today's session. So Peter will probably give a bit of an introduction, and then we'll be looking at some of the accessibility features that are and might enable you to access your Windows computer. We'll then look at iPads. We'll then look at using assistive technology hardware for accessing your computer and devices and how they might work for you. We'll have a look at ZoomText magnifier software, and hopefully we'll have a look at some of the new wearable devices that might also be of use. So we'll then have an opportunity for questions and our contact information at the end. So I'll now hand over to Peter. So thanks, Peter.
Thank you, Beck. And Beck, thank you very much also for facilitating this webinar today. For those of you who can't guess, Beck has got COVID, and she's such a trooper. She's still doing the webinar today, which is fantastic. Thank you so much. If anybody has any concerns, as far as I know, COVID doesn't transmit over Zoom sessions. So even though it is a virus. All right, so I'm going to be talking about some ways of making computers and iPads more usable, even if you have low vision conditions. I'm not going to be so much talking about for people who are totally blind. It's more about people who maybe they are just starting to struggle to use their device, and they're just wondering, is there something I can do just to make this easier for me to read the print? So largely I'll be looking at some simple modifications and adjustments, but we'll also look at some specialist software and also some hardware that might help as well. We are going to be looking at Windows computers, with the Windows environment, not the Mac environment. But we will also be looking at the iPad as well, which of course some of the things that we do with iPad will translate to the Mac environment, so for Mac computers as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to start by sharing my computer screen, which is a Windows computer screen, and show you some of the issues that people might face, and then some of the simple things you can do to make things bigger and a little bit clearer. I'm just going to share my screen. So I personally like to have a black background to my screen. I just find it more restful for me. I don't have a vision impairment, but I just find that if I change the background from some very, there's often a lot of photographs and even sometimes animations that you get on your computers now. And I find that a bit distracting when I'm trying to find icons. They kind of disappear into the background. So I actually changed my background to a solid black background. And one of the ways that we make these adjustments is by right-clicking. Right-click means to press the right mouse button on the desktop anywhere, and then we can change things like personalize, which allows us to go and change backgrounds and so on, and display settings, which allows us to change the size of icons and that sort of thing. And that's what I'm going to be starting with. So that's one way of getting to these adjustments. You right-click, it brings up a menu, and you then choose left-click on display settings. Another way would be to come down to the taskbar and in the start area to type ease of access. And ease of access will take you to much the same area that you would have had if you had done a right-click on the desktop. And here we can do quite a lot of things to make it easier in the ease of access settings for people who want to make adjustments to their screen. I'm not going to go into all of them by any means, but this is your mission control if you want to make adjustments. So, for example, one of the settings is make everything brighter, and you can adjust that with a slider here. The one we're going to be looking at is to change the size of apps and text on the main display, but you'll also notice that there's also make text bigger. So what we can do here is we've got a slider where we can actually drag to make text bigger and so on. But the first thing we are going to do is we're going to make everything bigger to change the size of apps. The way we do this is we click on the right-hand side of the drop-down. And I deliberately had it 100% to start with because I wanted to show you how small everything appears on a modern computer when it's at 100%. We're going to go up to 150% now. And when I click on this, I hope you can see that everything has magically gotten a lot bigger. I'm going to come out of that now and I'm going to go to the cross. And now my icons are a lot larger. My taskbar is a lot larger. The little system tray down the bottom right corner with the date and everything is a lot larger. That's probably one of the simplest things people can do to get an immediate benefit. So that's what we call scaling, display scaling. It's about making everything on the screen just a lot larger and more readable. The other thing that we can do, and I'm going to go to a program, Microsoft Word, and this is just as an example. We could have used, of course, an email program like Outlook or something, but what I want to show you now is the difference between changing the font size and changing the display of the font size. It's an important concept that we have to understand. A lot of people I see, they know how to change the font size in their email system and they make everything bigger. In fact, they can even switch it so that when they receive emails that it's bigger too. But here, there's a difference between changing the font size. So let's say I want to increase the font size here. I can go up to the little ribbons at the top here, and one of them is an increase font size button. And if I click that, it's a large A. You won't see much effect immediately, but when I start typing, the font is a lot bigger. I've actually have changed the font here. If I printed that, it would appear bigger. If I sent this as an email to somebody, it would appear bigger when they received it. That's one way, of course, but remember that the effect is affecting everybody. So the people you're sending the letter to, they may not want it at 76 point or something huge like that. The person that's receiving the email, they may not want to read it at those large fonts either. So is there another way of doing it that doesn't affect the font, but does affect the appearance? Yes, there certainly is. So what you can do, I'll just write a little bit more, and I'll shrink the font a little bit. So I'll just shrink this down here. This is a test of writing. What I'm going to show you is called, what I call it, control scroll. What it is, it's a way of using this little feature down the bottom right, in this case in Word, but it could be in an email, could even be in an internet browser. This is the zoom control in the bottom right corner. And at the moment we're at whatever percent, 100 and something percent here. And I could choose to zoom by dragging the slider to the left or to the right. And you can see it zooming there on the screen. So it's making it appear bigger, but the font's actually not changing. But it's actually quite inconvenient for me to have to go down to that bottom right corner and very accurately place the mouse pointer on the tiny slider and drag it left and right. So is there a way of doing it without having to go to the slider? Well, yes, there is. What we do is, and I actually may need to swap to you, Michael, if you can, and Rebecca, if you can maybe pin Michael here. We're going to use a technique called control scroll. What this is the control key is in the bottom left corner of the keyboard. And on a computer mouse, we usually have a wheel, which we call the scroll wheel. Now, the normal operation of the scroll wheel is to scroll the document up and down. And you can see that's happening now. I'm just wheeling it up and down. And that's a very useful function. But when we actually use control with scroll, in other words, I hold down control and scroll, I can use it as a zooming function. So we can either take our finger off the control and just use the scroll wheel, or we can hold down the control and we can use it as a zooming function. And I call that control scroll. So just coming back to my screen now, which is the shared screen here. You might have noticed that when I did a zoom or a control scroll, it affected the display area, that's the content area, but it did not affect the ribbon at the top. And we'll look at some techniques for that in a moment for making that bigger. But for many people, they may still be able to recognize the shapes, and they may be familiar with where these little controls are for putting like an underline or a bold or putting a highlight through the text. But their main thing is they want to be able to read the content. The content area is in Word. In an email, it would be where you're writing the body of an email. On the internet, and I'm just going to switch over to the internet now, the same thing can be used. So at the moment, I'm just scrolling up and down through the page. Go away. I don't want to read more. Okay. Now, I can still use control scroll. I can go control, scroll, and make the content as big as I like. Then I remove my finger from the control wheel, the control key, and I can use the scroll wheel to scroll through the article. And look at that. Look how much better that is for reading. And importantly, you'll notice that the content is fitting within the borders of the screen. So I can simply scroll down this magnified column now. Everything's made, including the photograph, is made bigger. I might make her face bigger. So I'm going to go control, scroll. Let that go away. I don't wish to read more. So I'm going to have to zoom back out to remove that. So you're going to have to play this in and out to, if a control is moved off the screen, it's too large at that magnification, you're going to have to zoom back out with the control scroll so that you can click on the buttons and so on. Now, once again, the control scroll on the internet does not affect the ribbon at the top. That's unmagnified still. It's only the content area that is magnified. So is there a way of magnifying everything on the screen? Yes, there is. There's a couple of ways. One is to use the inbuilt magnification facility within Windows called Windows Magnifier. And another way, which I'll show later on, is to use the special software like the ZoomText magnifier reader software. And this will allow you to magnify everything on the screen, and with the ZoomText, do a heap of other things too. But I'm going to start with the Windows magnifier. If you want to start magnifier, again, come down to the search box at the bottom here, and apologies for those of you that are using Windows 11, there may be just a slightly different technique for this. But for Windows 10, we come down to the bottom left corner and we type magnifier. And here we have an app called Magnifier, which I'm going to switch on now just by clicking it. It brings up a little control here. It's called Magnifier. If I wish to switch off Magnifier, I could just press the cross here. And at the moment, we're at 200%. Now, what this means is I cannot fit the whole screen within my view. So how do I read this? What I have to do is I have to take the mouse pointer and move left towards the left-hand edge. And what will happen is everything will scroll for me into view. If I want to go to the top, I go to the top, towards the top of the screen, and I'm just sliding with my mouse. And now I get to the top of the screen. And this way, I can now see the ribbon from left to right. And if I wish to make it bigger, I could either come back to the magnifier control, or I could remember a particular key, which is the Windows key, and that's the one with the picture of Windows on it, and the plus key. So at the moment, I'm just holding down the Windows key and I'm tapping the plus key. If I want to zoom the other way, I have to press the minus key. So I go Windows minus. And if I wish to switch it off altogether, I'll just hit the cross and away she goes. So now we're back to no magnifier. This is free within Windows. It's very simple to use, and it's a really useful way of just pushing everything up by 200% or perhaps a little bit more. But remember that the effect will be to push everything off the screen, requiring you then to move left and right and up and down. I'm just going to do that again. Magnifier. And so here, what it will, when I'm at 200%, I have to read to the edge, and then I'm moving my mouse pointer to the right-hand edge, and I read that. Then I have to come back to the left-hand side, and so on. This could be quite tedious if you're reading a lot. It would be better, in this case, to have your magnifier down at just 100%, but use your control scroll to make the content bigger, because that's containing it within the borders of your screen in one, so there's no left-right motion required. So this would apply to all web content. And the thing about that is so much of what we do when we talk about being online, like online shopping and banking and so on, is in a browser like this. This is Microsoft Edge, but it could be Chrome. So the things I'm showing you here apply to when you're banking or when you're online shopping and so on. You can use these same techniques just to make everything a little bit bigger and so on. Now, I'm going to also show you a couple of other things whilst we're online here. Excuse me a moment, I'm just going to clear a message. One of them is on the web, on the internet here, that you may not be aware of this feature called Read Aloud, which comes with the Microsoft Edge. And what this is, in the address bar, for not all websites, but for a lot of websites, you may notice a little A with what looks like a speaker type symbol. And for some other websites, you may see something called like a book with a speaker, and that's called Immersive Reader. These two functions were put in to make it possible to listen to the website that you have, to use your ears to listen to the website. So how does it work? Well, what you do is you're on the website, you click on the Read allowed this page.
NSW Women's Council President picked to fill Liberal Upper House seat. Tom Ray. February 23rd, 2023, 8:11 a.m. Save. Share.
And I can pause it because there's a control for pausing at the top. Rebecca, I hope that's coming through on the screen share. Great. And so it's not all websites, but if they have an A, then it can be read out loud. It's fantastic for longer content like news and that sort of thing. So that's called read aloud. Now I'm going to turn this around to the other side of this problem when people have low vision, and that's about the input side. Oftentimes people start to have trouble seeing what they're typing on the keyboard. Maybe they're not a touch typist. We would encourage people to, if they can, to try and learn to become a touch typist, especially if they have a progressive vision problem, that they anticipate that their vision is going to get a lot worse. It would be great to invest time, whilst your vision's still fairly good, in learning to touch type. But many people will simply get a large print keyboard, and I'm just going to show you one. I don't know if, Mike, you can bring the camera onto this. So for a large print keyboard, we have letters that are larger by about 4 times than your conventional lettering on a laptop keyboard, and they're also quite bold. So this is a ZoomText keyboard, and we often find people use this quite well, especially if they're not confident typists. And you'll also notice that these symbols here, like the @ sign and the hash sign and the pound and the dollar sign, they're also a lot larger than they are on a conventional keyboard. Again, that makes it so much easier. But another opportunity now for people using Office 365, which is the Word suite and the Outlook and so on, is that you can use speech dictation to type instead of typing. I'm going to go back to Microsoft Word. And of course I could type, but I can also use a facility called Windows Speech Recognition, or even a paid-for program called Drag and Dictate to use my voice to type. So the way we switch that on in Windows is we go the Windows key and the letter H. So again, I hold down the Windows, tap the letter H, and then at the top of the screen we have a little microphone that's listening. And as I'm speaking, it will be typing for me. Full stop. New line. Now it's actually gone to sleep here, so I'm just going to switch it on again so it's listening. Full stop, new line. And as you can see, it put in a full stop and it went down to the new line. The reason why it corrected the capital at the beginning of the sentence was Word doing that, not the speech recognition. Full stop. Now I've just switched it off. So you see how accurate that was. I was just speaking, and it was typing probably as fast, or faster than I could type it. It's not going to be perfect. So especially with place names, it will make mistakes. Like if I said Kapalaba, if I said Mujiriba or something like that, it would probably make a mistake with the spelling of that. Or if I said Anastasia Palaszczuk or something like that, it would probably not be able to type that correctly. So we can't completely avoid the keyboard, but for the bulk, the 90% of what we're writing in an email to somebody, we can use the Windows Speech Recognition or Drag and Dictate to type for us. Okay, so that's an overview of some of the things we can do straight away, especially with Windows, just to make it easier to magnify and to for the input side for the keyboards or the Windows Speech Recognition. I'm going to flick now. I'm going to stop my share and flick now to some things to do with iPads, because of course iPads are, we all know of them, and most of us have an iPad as well as perhaps a computer, and they use a different operating system to Windows. So I've got an iPad just here on a stand, and I don't know if anybody's ever used these simple stands for positioning their iPad. They're really quite handy. Just going to bring it a bit closer. So with an iPad, there's a number of things also we can do to magnify and so on. They can be a little tricky to do with gestures. We call these things gestures. So I'm going to demonstrate how we can make this text on this screen here bigger. I've already got the feature switched on, so I'll have to show you how to do it, how to switch it on. But the process is this. We use three fingers, and we do a double tap. I'm going to do that now. It can be a bit awkward not to tap with the fourth finger, so I'll go 3 fingers, double tap. And it's made everything bigger. I then use not 1 finger, but 2 fingers or more, 3 fingers, to move the magnified screen around. As you can see, I do need to have 3 fingers placed to do that. And now this is very similar to what we were doing with the mouse on the computer, where we move the mouse to the right-hand edge or the left-hand edge, and it's scrolled for us. But remember, it's not 1 finger. That doesn't do anything. It's 3 fingers to move it. Now, if I wish to turn that magnification off, again, 3 fingers, double tap. So the idea is we use 3 fingers and we double tap. And that double tap is a da-da, like that. A lot of people struggle with that. They either do 2 fingers or whatever, but just practice that, and it can be from either side or either hand. So the on and off, on and off. Now let's say I wanted it to be bigger or smaller than that. That's magnification. What we do is we do the same thing, but we keep our hand on the screen, and then we push from bottom left to top right. So I'm going to do this now. So I'm going to go double tap, hold, and push. And I'm keeping my fingers on the screen. And you can see that as I move from bottom left to top right, it increases the magnification. And when I release my fingers from the screen, that's set now at that size. And again, I can scroll just by moving 3 fingers, dragging it around on the screen like that. And when I switch it off again, 3 finger double tap, it goes back to unmagnified like that. So how did I get to switch that feature on? So what I had to do was I go to on my iPad, I've got a little home button. So I'm going to press that once. I need to go to the cog where we've got settings. And I go to accessibility, which is on the left-hand side, accessibility. And here we have the Zoom, and it's currently on. And this shows you that we can switch this on and off. So oftentimes it's not on an iPad, and we need to switch Zoom on. And here it says double tap 3 fingers to zoom, and so on. It's also possible for people with significant vision loss or who are blind to switch on a feature called VoiceOver, which will actually speak out loud everything on the screen. And we can change also the display and text size so that we can have larger text. And here we have a slider so we can make things bigger on the iPad. So just to repeat that, I'm just going to go back. This is all under accessibility. We have display and text size. We have larger text and a slider then to make the text smaller or larger. And frequently all people need to do is to make that simple adjustment, and they'll be able to use the iPad much more successfully. Now, again, with the iPad, it is possible to get it to read out loud. I'm going to show you the one that's quite popular with people who have low vision rather than those who are totally blind. I did mention that the VoiceOver gives people the ability to hear every single operation on the iPad. But I'm not going to be doing that today. I'm going to be instead showing you a feature that's quite useful in say Safari or in email to read out loud the page, just like we did on the Windows system. And what it is a 2-finger drag from the top of the screen down.
Help keep family and friends informed by sharing this article. The federal government has made it clear it wants to have a conversation about changing our superannuation system to potentially save the budget tens of billions of dollars.
And I paused it with a button to pause and play, and I can rewind and fast forward using that controller there. So that was all just by dragging 2 fingers from the top towards the bottom, and then it would read that article out loud for me. That's really, really powerful for a long email or for a news article, just to have it read out loud like that. And again, to switch that feature on, is through settings. And in the accessibility, again, we have this thing called spoken content. And we have speak screen here like that. Swipe down with 2 fingers from the top of the screen to hear the content of the screen. So that's just a couple of little tips and tricks for using with the iPad. The other thing, of course, is people find it difficult when they are on, say, an email or something like that, or a text message. They find it difficult. I'll just go to notes here. They find it difficult to read and operate the little tiny on-screen keypad here. Now, we can't be sticking large print stickers onto the screen, but what you can do is you can purchase a Bluetooth keyboard. This is actually a Windows one, but it also works with the iPad, and there's also an iPad version as well. And you'll notice, of course, it's large print, in this case, high contrast, and this can be Bluetoothed to the iPad. In fact, I actually have it Bluetoothed at the moment. So let's say I am just moving around. Let's go to here, out of that. Yeah. So we can actually use this to move the focus around the iPad. I can actually be typing here. Hello. And that's just so much easier than having to use the on-screen keyboard, just with a Bluetooth keyboard. By the way, that also applies to the iPhone too, so that you could, if you're having trouble typing back a message or something like that on an iPhone, the same principle can apply. You can buy a Bluetooth keyboard and you can actually type into your iPhone that way. Another thing to bear in mind is if you have a small screen iPad, you can also connect it with a cable, a lightning cable, to a large television set and see a magnified view of the thing. Another thing that some people have said is, well, could I put this under a magnifier? And of course, we could use a magnifying glass to view what's on the iPad or indeed on a computer screen. But remember, that means you're holding it. And that, especially if you're holding one thing in one hand, one in the other, and you need to tap something, that's really quite awkward. So it may be better to use a electronic magnifier. This is the Clover book here. This is a electronic magnifier that's principally used for paperwork. So here, we can simply magnify paperwork underneath the Clover book. There's my fingers there. But equally, you could, of course, put an iPad under here as well, and that would be a simple way of magnifying. The problem is, of course, that if you want to actually click on an icon, you need to move your hand underneath, maybe move the whole lot across, and then you'd be tapping like this here. So that in itself is not a very effective way of interacting with an iPad, but it might be quite handy if somebody sent you a photograph and you just wanted to zoom it up on the electronic magnifier. So that's the use of a piece of hardware there to magnify. Some people also say, well, could I just get stronger spectacles? And this here is a max detail magnifying pair of spectacles. It'll only give a 2 times magnification, but it can help with things like computer screens, iPads, and so on, because it will magnify everything on the screen 2 times, but of course it's hands-free. You're wearing the magnifier. It's not the most beautiful thing, but that gives me 2 times magnification of Michael right now, and I can't say it's improved your Mike, but okay. So, but this may be a starting point for somebody with low vision who wants to see the computer screen a little more clearly, but also the keyboard a bit more clearly too. Another option for people that may already possess a reading machine like the Orcam Read. The Orcam Read, it's a text-to-speech device that can read out loud print and paperwork that you aim at it. I've just connected it to a speaker so that you can hear the output. Now, its normal operation would be for paperwork. So normally we would just be aiming it at paperwork.
Hello, this is a test of writing. Top of screen we have a little microphone. It's listening, and as I am speaking, it will be typing for me.
But there's no reason why it couldn't also be aimed at a computer screen, or even a television screen that's connected to a computer. And in fact, I have one gentleman that does precisely that. He actually has his computer connected to a large television, and he can use the mouse and so on. He's not really interested in typing or anything like that, but he wants to read articles, and he has an Orcam Read. And so what he does is he just sees the paragraph on the screen that he wishes to read, he aims it at the paragraph, clicks a button, and it reads that paragraph for him. So that's a very straightforward option for himself. He found that more useful than using magnification or zooming. And so I'm going to just move now to more industrial strength magnification with the ZoomText Magnifier Reader program. Because this program, some of the effects don't transmit well over Zoom, we may actually be using the camera on a large screen so that you can see the effect rather than me sharing my screen. And ZoomText is a program from Freedom Scientific. It's worldwide the most popular screen magnification and reading software. And this is something that we distribute all through Australia and support. Our consultants are all expert in these kind of more sophisticated tools. So here we have the program running. You'll see on the screen the controller for the ZoomText Magnifier Reader. And you might think it looks a little bit like the controller for the Windows magnifier, but it has a lot of extra features. So, I mean, the first obvious thing is let's magnify. So I can either use the mouse to click on the zoom, and here we are at 2 times magnification. And now we're seeing all of our icons so much more clearly, and that's only at 2 times. We can go to much stronger strengths, 3 times. And one of the lovely things about ZoomText is that wherever it's possible, it redraws the fonts so that they are nice and sharp. Sometimes with Windows Magnifier, when we magnify to larger sizes, the fonts get pixelated. They look very squarey, like a bit blurred edges. But the ZoomText is always trying to redraw the fonts so that they're nice and sharp. The other thing that we can do with the ZoomText is we can change things like the background color of the screen. We can change the pointer, the mouse pointer, and the typing cursor, and some other things. So I'm going to just show you some things we can do with the mouse pointer. At the moment, we're using a normal mouse pointer, a Windows one, but we can choose a scheme. And you might notice that I've got a red rectangle about whatever's in focus, and that's provided by ZoomText. That's ZoomText saying this is what's in focus at the moment. I'm going to go across, and I'm going to choose from one of the preset schemes that ZoomText provides. So I'm going to start with a large yellow one, and I'm going to click. And now I have a large yellow mouse pointer. I'm going to try another one. A giant green pointer. But I can do much more than that. I can actually have a circle when moving. Now, what I've got here is that the mouse pointer here is just a normal mouse pointer, and I could change the color of that and so on. But when I move the mouse pointer, a circle appears around it. This is one of the things that people often complain about, is they lose the mouse pointer. This way, all they have to do is move their mouse slightly, and their peripheral vision will detect not just the motion, but also the circle. So that's just an example of a simple modification with ZoomText to make it easier for people. Some people have tunnel vision, and they find it difficult to, like the mouse pointer might be over the bottom right, but their vision can only see the top left. So we could choose a scheme with crosshairs. I'm going to choose a scheme called yellow with full crosshairs. And though I've got the setting fairly faint at the moment, I've now got almost like a rifle scope where there's lines coming off the mouse pointer towards the edges of the screen. The idea is that if somebody has a very small field of view, all they need to do is find the red line and follow it, and they'll find the mouse pointer. So these are some simple adjustments that can apply all the time for any computer use, whether it's Word or Outlook or the internet, just to suit the vision condition. We can also have cursor enhancement so that the typing cursor is much easier to find. And of course, different levels of magnification. And finally, we have a whole heap of options to read out loud. At the moment, I've got the voice switched off. And now I've got the voice switched on. I don't know if the level from the microphone is loud enough to hear. But the thing that we can do is we can have it read everything. We can have it read whatever we're typing, every letter we type. We can have it reading whatever the mouse is hovering over. And that's particularly useful. At the moment, I've got it set to hover. Now, what this means is that it's not speaking as I'm moving, because when I'm moving around the screen, I'm kind of using just my recognition of icons. I'm not really reading. I just know that I always have my forms folder in the top left. But if there's a particular thing that I can't quite read it, but I don't want to zoom the magnification, I can just hover over. And it will read out loud what I'm hovering over. And this combination of hearing and seeing can be really quite beneficial for people that are struggling to read. In fact, what some people do is they actually don't have any they don't actually use any magnification or very little magnification, but they use the enhancement of the mouse pointer and the hover feature just to read. And the beautiful thing about that is that they can see the whole screen, and so they have context, but they're getting the enhancements from the ZoomText. So some of the other reading features that are quite useful are the app reader. And the app reader will read internet pages or Word documents in much the way that you've seen in a more rudimentary way with the read aloud. But with this, we can also use a speak it tool.
Did you want to share your screen with the sound so we can hear it a bit better?
Oh, that's a good idea. Why don't I do that? Okay. So the idea here is that we can use I can use the speak it tool just to read the bits that I've highlighted. Just bear with me a moment.
App reader. Use speak it tool checked. App reader. Fill a vacated upper house seat after a razor-tight ballot at Stoke Messy.
So the idea is that you can simply point to a paragraph and have that read out loud.
The result, which was determined by the Liberal Party's state executive late,
and still be interacting with the web page. So you can still click on links and so on, but when you want to read something, you simply just highlight it and have it read out loud. Or you could have the whole page read out loud. This could be magnified as well. That's one of the nice things about this is the ZoomText is that even though you have magnification, the actual
NSW Women's document
The actual,
resume document. Okay.
even though I have a magnified page, it will actually track the cursor as it's moving through the document. So I might be typing and it will still track and keep in the screen whatever we have magnified in the center of the screen. So these, of course, there's a lot of features in there that might need to be customized. What our consultants do when they're helping people, they'll use the most, try and find the most useful features for people and make them, try them with their most popular applications, whether it's online shopping and so on. I think we've just got perhaps a moment just to look at some of the sort of like space age stuff that is coming out as well. So you've already seen one space age thing, which of course is the Allcam Read, which fantastic, very fast text-to-speech device. But there's also a thing called the Vision Buddy. And the Vision Buddy, I don't know if you can see Michael's view here. It's a specially modified virtual reality headset. And what this can do is when I wear it, I can see almost like an IMAX cinema view of either what's in front of my camera. There's a camera at the front, so that could be used for looking at paperwork or at a television or something like that, or an iPad. But we can also take a feed, a USB cable feed from a computer or even from an iPad. And what that gives us a view through the eyepieces here, it's like we're in like an IMAX cinema. So imagine that my computer screen here was spread out like on an IMAX cinema screen right in front of my face. And if I wanted to see the top left corner, I would just move my head to the top left corner. Want to see the bottom right corner, I'd move my head down there. And of course, this means you don't need a large screen to cart around with you. You can just plug it into a laptop. The advantage of that for some people would be where people simply can't manage with magnification, especially when they can't manage with having to follow and scroll, go to an edge and so on. With this, you see the whole screen, but you do need to move your head. But that's a much more natural thing than trying to remember where icons are on a magnified screen. So for some people, this really might be quite a useful option, especially for YouTube type content. So maybe they want to watch a concert or something like that. They can do that very comfortably with the Vision Buddy, because that content can be streamed straight into the Vision Buddy. That means that you could be in bed just on your back watching that YouTube clip or that concert, and you wouldn't actually need to be at a computer desk or anything like that. And the just the final variation is, of course, it's in my pocket. Thank you. This is a smaller version of the Allcam. This is called the Allcam My Eye, and it does the same sort of thing, but instead of having to hold it in your hand, you can actually clip it magnetically to the side of your spectacles. And then you could be looking at paperwork, or you could be looking at an iPad or a computer screen, and all you need to do to read out loud in your ear from the device is point. So you use your finger to point. So in this case, thank you. I just got the speaker here. Of course, the speaker is normally in my ear, but I've got it connected to the Bluetooth speaker here. So all I need to do if I wanted to read something on my computer screen is I would just point at the paragraph I want to read. And if I want to stop it, I just put my hand out like that. So this is like real space age stuff. This is where I just use my finger to point to what I want to read, and I stop it with my hand like this. It's even possible to enter a special mode called smart reading mode, where I actually use a voice command to ask it to read the page. So I could say, hey, Allcam, smart reading. Read from writing.
Yeah. I can't actually hear the speaker there.
I'm sorry, there's a little low, the speaker, isn't it? Yes, I might just see if I can increase the volume. Start from writing. So exit.
Mm-hmm.
All of that, when I asked it to read from some text that I was looking for, it might be in a newspaper article where I was looking for something about Boris Johnson. All I need to do is use my voice and I say, start from Boris Johnson. It would find on the page, on the screen, the first occurrence of that word, and it would read from there. So that's a feature called the Hey Allcam voice commands that's also present in the Allcam read as well. I know that some of that is, say, pretty space age. We don't need to go to those lengths, but it's just to show you that there's a heap of really interesting technology available to allow people to read computer screens, iPads, television screens, and paperwork if they have the Allcam and so on. But these sorts of things are very easy to affect, either just simple modifications to the display settings, all the way through using your voice to type for you, using large print keyboards, using speech output either by just using gestures like 2 fingers down on an iPad, or using the ZoomText for magnification and speaking out loud. That's just well, within an hour we covered quite a lot of ground, but that's to give you an overview of the sorts of options we have for people to continue to work online with their computers and devices. Beck, I think I'll hand back to you and see if we have any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. So, yeah, if anyone's got any questions, then yeah, please put them in the chat. We have had a couple. So, Peter, one person had asked whether with the iPad, is there a similar way to do things on Android devices? I did have a quick look at that. There is a magnifier.
There is certainly the magnification and the adjustment to the font sizes, all of those things under these settings in the Android system. There's also a feature called TalkBack, which is similar to the voiceover feature in the iPhone as well. I'm not sure. They do have a feature for zooming as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so familiar with that, but it's going to be much the same process for zooming in and out on the Android system. One thing I would say that a lot of the accessibility features on the iPhone are probably better for people with vision impairment than they are on the Android system. And a lot of people, especially with more advanced vision loss, will get a better benefit from the iPhone, iPad accessibility than they will on the Android systems.
Yeah, thank you. And also, are there apps on a phone that can use the camera to read menus, etc. at restaurants? I guess we're talking about things like Seeing AI and Google Lookout and that kind of thing.
Yes, there are a lot of apps for the iPhone and the Android for reading out text, as you say, using the camera. So perhaps the most famous one is the Microsoft Seeing AI app. So that's the word seeing with the letters AI after it. That's a free app. And the corresponding app for that on the Android would be Google Lookout. And the idea of both of those apps is that you hover your phone over the document you're trying to read, and it uses the internet to do the speech recognition, but the text recognition, but it almost instantly reads out loud whatever you've got your phone hovering over. It's also possible to go a little higher and take a photograph and have the whole document captured and then read out loud. And some of those apps have got other things too, like describe what's around you. Like it'll say there's a chair, there's a table, there's a cup. They have barcode readers to give you information about the product that you're actually looking at in the supermarket. Some of those features, by the way, are also available on the Allcam My Eye, the last thing I showed you with the clip to the side of my glasses. But if you're already carrying a smartphone like an iPhone, definitely I would recommend you get an app like Microsoft Seeing AI or Google Lookout for the Android system.
Okay, thank you. Oh, and for anyone that had any difficulties, yeah, we will be sending around the recording. So someone's also asked, what would help when using the iPhone to take photos or video outside? Oh, trying to read the settings in photo or video. I suppose the voiceover could possibly help with that. I don't know if you can magnify those. Yeah,
you could probably magnify them. Yeah. By the way, on the questions about when you want to really dig into iPhone, iPad accessibility, our colleagues at Vision Australia, the assistive technology team, really, that's what they do. They're just real experts at that. And you can book an appointment with an adaptive technology person from Vision Australia, and they will be able to help you, train you to use some of those features, give you some pointers just to maximize your use of those sorts of devices. And also occupational therapists with guide dogs as well often have those skills. So I encourage you to connect to those sorts of services, which require a lot more training and customization. So our role is more around understanding the equipment, some of which I've touched on today.
Yeah, thanks, Peter. And yeah, another person's asked if they have ZoomText for Apple Macs, because they like their Apple but used to using ZoomText previously. So unfortunately not anymore, but yeah, there is a Zoom, the Zoom feature in the Mac, but yeah.
That's right. Also, I believe the Dragon software that used to run on the Mac is also not available either. So
no. So there is their own inbuilt dictate systems. There was one earlier as well about which I did answer by typing about what's the difference between in Office now. There's quite often a dictate button. What's the difference between that and the Windows recognition? I think it's more that's just dictation within the application, whereas the Windows you can use.
I think for the Office 365, for the 365 now, it's pretty much the same thing. So the Windows key H will switch that on. For the point is, it's for anything that's got a typing area. So you don't use that to control the computer. It's only if you're in a typing area and you switch that feature on, then it will dictate rather than type for you. The Office 365, the speech recognition on that, you do need to be online for that to work.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you, Peter, and thank you, Michael. If anyone's got questions, particularly about the assistive technology side of things, I'll just share my screen again with our contact information. So I think that was all the questions that we got. So if people do have questions, there's some information on our website, quantumrlv.com.au, 1300 883 853, or info@quantumrlv.com.au, and we've got consultants around the country that can help you help you out with those things, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you. So yeah, thanks again, Peter and Michael, and that great overview. So cheers.
Thanks, Beck.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.